the last queen of the North, who smiled to the Iron Maiden, the queen who was born in silence. They say her first breath didn't sound like a cry. It sounded like wind across snow. The midwives whispered that her skin was too pale, her heartbeat too slow, and her eyes colorless, like frost over a still lake. But she lived, and she never cried. Not once. Queen Vaedra of Varnhelm died in labor, her final screams echoing through stone halls as ice cracked across the palace walls. And the newborn, Iselra, looked up at the priest sent to bless her, eyes wide and silent. He never spoke again, not for lack of trying. His tongue remained, but his voice had fled him forever. He spent the rest of his days carving warnings into the chapel floor, in a language no one remembered. And yet, they crowned her anyway. She was the last born of the Ice Line, the final heir to a kingdom forged on blood and blizzard, the last in a line of monarchs said to be more spirit than mortal. They said Varnhelm was a dying kingdom then, but it didn't die, because she ruled for nearly 100 years, and she never aged. No fire in the castle. You wouldn't survive a night in Varnhelm's palace, not just because of the cold, but because of the silence. There were no hearths, no laughter, no fires. Iselra, once crowned, passed a royal edict. No flame shall be kept where the queen walks. So the torches were torn down, the stoves removed, the great fireplaces sealed with mortar, and the castle froze. It began with frost on the windows. Then the walls began to bleed hoarfrost. Eventually, the floor cracked under footsteps as if it were ice itself. Still, the queen walked barefoot through the halls, smiling gently. She held audiences in rooms so cold that ministers coughed blood into their gloves. But they didn't complain, because no one who complained lasted long. One baron who dared suggest lighting a brazier during a snowstorm was found the next morning with his eyes frozen open. His tongue had burst in the night. They say he died smiling, because her smile was contagious. Not metaphorically, not psychologically, contagious. The court began to mimic her, smiling more, blinking less, eating less, until the walls were filled with blank-faced nobles and whispering children, all pale and stiff, like statues dusted in frost. The princess who melted. There was once another royal in Varnhelm, a cousin from the Southern Empire, Princess Yold. She was sent to live in the north as a gesture of alliance. Bright, warm, full of life. For 3 weeks, she held dinners with music and dancing. She laughed. She brought fire, and the queen tolerated it, until she didn't. The night of the winter solstice, Princess Yold lit a ceremonial candle in the temple. Something small, innocent. The next morning, her bed was empty, but her skin was found near the reflecting pool, completely intact, as though she had melted out of it. Inside the skin was only snow, and outside the temple, the frost had grown claws, whispers beneath the ice. It was the children who first spoke of what lived beneath the castle. They said they heard voices under the stone, not in language, but in feeling. They described it as old, gentle, and hungry. Iselra would take them walking the courtyard during blizzards, barefoot and smiling, their hands in hers. Many never returned. When the lords demanded answers, she would simply say, "The snow takes what it is owed." And then she'd smile, wider than necessary, wider than human. One of the maids caught sight of her reflection in the mirror once, while the queen was alone. She screamed for an hour before biting through her own tongue. The Inquisition arrives. In the 97th year of her reign, the Empire sent the Black Inquisition, 6 black-cloaked men on bone-colored horses. Holy men, trained to purge corruption, heresy, and witchcraft. They arrived with a writ of execution. Heretics, cultists, blasphemers, and they believed they could break her. She welcomed them with a banquet of ice fruits and dried meats. The food never thawed. Their breath smoked from their mouths, even indoors. One priest asked to light a fire. She didn't respond, just smiled. That night, 5 of them died in their sleep, without wounds, without blood, just frost rimmed around their eyes and blackened fingertips. Only the Grand Inquisitor survived. They say he awoke to see her sitting at the foot of his bed, her mouth unmoving but her voice in his head. He left that night, ran back to the capital with both eyes white and a sigil etched into his chest. The same spiral symbol now found in ice formations around Varnhelm's ruins. The Iron Maiden below the throne. The betrayal didn't come from her enemies. It came from the blood she raised as her own. Her niece, Princess Iselra, had lived her entire life in Varnhelm's palace. Daughter of Iselra's sister, raised by silent handmaidens and statuesque courtiers. She, too, learned to smile without blinking. But unlike the others, she remembered warmth. It came in fragments of southern sun, of bonfires at midsummer, of laughter that didn't echo like screams. And she remembered what her mother had told her years ago before her accident. One day, you must bury her, because she has already buried us all. Princess Iselra gathered those who still retained some shred of fire in their veins. Old generals, trembling maids, loyalists who remembered what it meant to feel heat. They plotted in secret, speaking only in steam-filled bathhouses and beneath boiling kettles, the only places where frost could not hear. And one night, they acted, the Queen's last walk. They stormed the throne room with firebrands and iron. Iselra led them, holding a torch that hissed in the cold like a living thing. Iselra stood in the center of the frozen hall, alone, unarmed, still smiling. She did not run. She did not resist. Her hands lifted softly, as if she had been waiting. "Are you ready to see beneath the snow?" she asked them, voice gentle as falling ash. They shackled her wrists with blessed iron, wrapped her in chains forged in sacred flame. The floor beneath her cracked as she stepped, ice retreating where her skin touched stone. Down through the hidden stairwell they led her, down into the chamber no one spoke of. It was said to be where the first kings made pacts. A vault carved into the belly of the mountain, and at the center stood an object of horror, the Iron Maiden of Varnhelm, the frozen device. The Iron Maiden was not designed for punishment. It was designed for binding. Tall, carved of blackened iron, its inside was filled with spike-like shards of old glacier stone, jagged, curved, and human. It was said the device had been used once before, long ago, to imprison something that had fallen from the sky, covered in snow, speaking in songs that made men bleed from their ears. They used it again now. Iselra walked to it, chains dragging behind her. She didn't look afraid. "This won't kill me," she whispered to Iselra, who stood with trembling torch in hand. "You cannot destroy what is not bound by time." Iselra looked into her eyes, those ageless, glassy, ancient things, and said, "Then you'll suffer until time ends." The Iron Maiden opened with a groan. Mist poured out, colder than death. Iselra stepped in and turned one last time, and she smiled, the smile that couldn't die. The maiden closed, the chamber sealed. The cold stopped spreading, for a time. Iselra was crowned Queen of the North that night. Fires were lit again in the palace. The frost retreated from the walls. For 27 days, the sun rose with warmth over Varnhelm. But then, the dreamers began to speak. Whispers in their sleep, words in forgotten languages, cries of metal on bone. Iselra herself began to bleed from her ears during sleep, muttering one phrase over and over. "She is still smiling." They went down to check the vault. The guards opened the stone doors. What they found made 2 men go blind, and a third tear his own face off just to stop smiling. Because inside the Iron Maiden, there was no body, only snow, and a burned impression of a face smiling wide, too wide, pressed into the interior of the iron shell. It was burned there from the inside out, the collapse of Varnhelm. After that, the winter returned. But it wasn't a season anymore. It was a presence. It came with whispers and cracking stone. Children began disappearing again. Mirrors froze from the inside. and those who stared too long into their reflections began to smile back with her mouth. Liera ordered the palace sealed, the Iron Maiden buried, the throne room closed for eternity. She ruled for only 7 years. Then she walked into the mountains barefoot, smiling. They never found her body. The rediscovery, modern day. In 1997, an archaeological team funded by the Varnhelm Historical Institute claimed to locate the buried vault of Queen Iselra. The footage was never released. The lead scientist, Dr. Halden Keir, recorded a final audio message. It's the only surviving media from the dig. We thought it was just folklore. We thought the Iron Maiden was symbolic. But it's real, and she's still inside. The smile, God, the smile is in all of us now. Don't come looking. Don't open it again. That night, the facility's backup generators failed. Temperatures inside dropped to minus 41 degrees Celsius. All 13 researchers died of hypothermia. In summer, the digital drives containing the footage were found encased in ice. Despite no refrigeration being present, the Iron Maiden was never recovered. The final whisper, there is a legend now, that anyone who dreams of her smile will hear a creak in the night, that a mirror left uncovered in winter will show her standing behind you, that those who try to open the vault become her next throne, because Iselra didn't die. She transcended. She became winter itself. And every winter, when the snow first falls in the north, there's a wind that howls through the old palace ruins. Some say it sounds like a scream. Others say it sounds like laughter. But those who've heard it, they all start to smile. Who was Queen Iselra? Queen Iselra wasn't just a monarch. She was a myth made flesh. Her unnatural longevity, her serene demeanor, and her inhuman tolerance for cold made it clear she was not entirely mortal. She claimed to be descended from the White Ones, a forgotten race, possibly ancient spirits or alien intelligences that lived in the ice long before humanity. The legends describe these beings as emotionless, yet eerily calm, capable of speaking in symbols, in dreams, in feelings instead of words, worshipped by the earliest tribes of the north, until those tribes mysteriously vanished. Iselra's birth was marked by supernatural cold, and the immediate death of her mother hinted that this child wasn't born from life, but from sacrifice. This introduces a theory that her entire bloodline was a vessel, designed over centuries to eventually host something ancient. Why did she outlaw fire? Iselra's first royal decree, no fire in the palace, is key. Fire is not just warmth, but purity, memory, and humanity. Banning fire symbolized rejection of human nature, embracing cold, alien stillness, silencing voices and suppressing rebellion. By removing fire, she removed resistance, memory of warmth, the ability for people to gather, laugh, or survive the darkness. And the people adapted, because the longer they lived near her, the more they began to reflect her stillness. Why was her smile terrifying? The Queen's smile is the central horror symbol in this story. At first, it seems regal, graceful, composed, but the longer one sees it, the more disturbing it becomes. Her smile never fades. It doesn't match her words. It stretches just a little too wide. It's not connected to joy or empathy. It's an echo of what a smile should be. People who spent too long near her began to smile for no reason, lose facial expression, forget how to cry or feel pain. Eventually, the smile becomes contagious, not as a metaphor, but as a literal psychological infection, a mimicry virus. Her smile becomes a plague. What happened to the children? The children taken on snow walks are never returned. This ties to ancient northern rituals of offering children to the ice for protection against harsh winters. But in this story, the children are taken to feed something beneath the palace, or possibly to replace pieces of the Queen's soul, or they become part of her consciousness, frozen into her hive mind. This is why later, when the voices return, they sound like children whispering behind the walls. She is still smiling, They whisper, because the queen now smiles through them. Why the Iron Maiden? The Iron Maiden in this story is not a medieval torture device, at least not in the traditional sense. It is a binding chamber, ancient and mystical, built to imprison a non-human intelligence, not to kill, but to contain. Constructed with glacial crystal shards, known to trap supernatural energies. When Iselra willingly enters the Iron Maiden, she knows. This won't kill her, but it might delay her return, and it might prevent her from spreading her influence for a while. Her last smile before the door closes becomes a warning. You've only paused me, not ended me. What are they, after the Iron Maiden is closed? The winter fades for a few weeks, a fall spring. But soon the symptoms return. Oh, frost creeping through walls. Oh, people hearing voices. Oh, sleepwalkers muttering in ancient Varnic. Oh, spontaneous smiling fits ending in madness. These phenomena prove that the Iron Maiden did not destroy the queen. Her essence leaked out through dreams, frost, and mirrors. And when the modern archaeologists open the vault, she takes her throne again. Who or what is Iselra? There are three plausible horror interpretations. 1. She is an ancient consciousness inhabiting a human body, passed down by ritual and preserved through cold. The Iron Maiden sealed her, but did not destroy her spiritual form. 2. She is a physical avatar of winter, a sentient force of death and silence, whose smile is the creeping numbness of freezing to death. She cannot be killed, only delayed. 3. She is a god or alien being who long ago crashed into the mountains and was buried beneath ice. The bloodline of Varnhelm was bred to resurrect her. Whichever you choose, one truth remains. She is not gone. Iselra as an allegory for emotional suppression. At one level, Queen Iselra represents the death of emotion. She is the embodiment of controlled appearance, suppressed grief, and unnatural calm. Her smile is not joy, it is enforced serenity. Her stillness isn't peace, it's the absence of passion. Her cold is not climate, it's emotional detachment made manifest. She rules by making others mimic her, emotionless, quiet, and obedient. Over time, those near her forget how to feel, forget how to cry, and finally, forget who they are. Her horror is psychological, a slow erasure of identity beneath a perfect exterior. The Northern Kingdom as a symbol of generational trauma. Varnhelm itself becomes a character, a kingdom raised in silence, covered in layers of ritual and secrecy, where the past is buried and no one speaks of what happened. Generational loyalty to a monarch who kills warmth. Citizens too afraid to question her until it's too late. A culture that worships the cold because it's all they've known. The people smile not because they're happy, but because they're afraid not to. This mirrors real-world situations where cultures or families suppress truth, emotion, and rebellion out of tradition, fear, or inherited trauma. Fire as forbidden memory. Fire in this story symbolizes more than warmth. It's free thought, rebellion, storytelling, and truth. Iselra bans fire because fire keeps people connected and expressive. Fire exposes things hidden in the cold. Fire means humanity still lives. When fire's outlawed, Varnhelm becomes a place of ritual compliance. Nobody remembers a time before her, and those who do, like Liera, are treated as dangerous. The return of fire signals resistance, but it's not enough. The damage is done. The Iron Maiden as a religious metaphor. In many horror stories, torture devices symbolize twisted faith. But here, the Iron Maiden is more than a prison. It's a sacrificial coffin. Think of it as a reverse crucifixion. She offers herself not to save others, but to wait and return. A vessel of eternal containment, similar to Egyptian burial chambers or Pandora's box. A religious relic built not by faith, but by fear. It's humanity's desperate attempt to trap a godlike being. But by placing her inside it, they didn't destroy her. They completed the ritual. Iselra walks into the Iron Maiden willingly, because she knows that after being sealed in blood and ice, she will become something more powerful than a queen. She will become an eternal archetype, the queen beneath the snow, the smile as a mimetic virus. Later in the story, people begin to smile involuntarily, often after hearing her name, or staring too long into mirrors, or dreaming of frost. This is a mimetic infection, a horrifying concept where an idea or image spreads like a disease. Her smile enters people's minds through images, sound, and language. Like a curse, it replaces their own emotional range with her blank serenity. Eventually, the victims become mouthpieces, dreaming her dreams, feeling her hunger. In modern terms, it's like a viral horror, one that spreads through media, memory, and myth. Iselra as a god of cold time. At the deepest level, Iselra is not a woman anymore. She is a timeless being, a cosmic entity, or even a personification of winter itself. Time is frozen around her. She doesn't age. History in her realm loops and repeats. The Iron Maiden seals her, but it doesn't stop her because time has no power over her. Think of her as winter incarnate. Not just literal cold, but symbolic cold. The cold of forgetting. The cold of silence. The cold that outlives every fire. And when the Iron Maiden is rediscovered in modern times, she returns not as a woman, but as a recurring cycle, a cosmic pattern that cannot die. She will rise every time humanity forgets how to feel, or favors control over compassion. The story ends not with her death, but with her transformation into legend, virus, and god. Final meaning. At its core, the last queen of the North, who smiled to the Iron Maiden, is a horror fable about the dangers of emotional suppression, the contagion of forced perfection, the cost of bearing uncomfortable truths, the way ritual and silence can become prisons, and how some horrors don't end, they freeze and wait. Closing thought. She didn't scream when they tortured her. She didn't cry when her people betrayed her. She simply smiled. And now that smile is spreading.